everybody. I'm Danielle Simone Brand. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Casey. I'm so happy to be here because I care deeply about this plant that has literally helped and healed me on so many levels. And I know it's the same for many of you out there. And I care deeply about moms. I'm a mom. I care about the mom experience, and that's what I want to talk about today. That's what we're talking about, obviously, in this State of the Cannamom Movement panel. And to quote Leah Maurer from last year's Cannamom Social, she said, "Moms have the collective power to be one of the most pivotal voices in the movement." And for so many reasons, I agree with that. And that's why I've invited these women, all moms, also entrepreneurs, advocates, and so much more, to share their perspectives and to discuss sort of where we are in this Cannamom movement. So one of our panelists, Shanitri Anthony, is not able to join us today. We have three wonderful panelists, and I'm so excited to introduce them to you. Also, just FYI, I had to cut some lines out of their bios because I can't tell you everything that's amazing about them, or I would be here literally talking, reading their bios the whole time. And the first person I'm going to bring up is Bianca Snyder. She is the founder of High Society Mama. Her mission is to inspire moms to be comfortable and confident with their decision to use plant medicine. In addition to being a social media and marketing genius, those are my words, by the way, but also facts, Bianca owns a seed-to-smoke artisanal CBD hemp brand called Society's Plant. She believes that the hemp grown on her family farm in Southwest Michigan is more than just a plant. It's society's plant to nurture and heal us. Welcome, Bianca. Hello, hello. And next, I'd like to bring up Dashita Dawson. Dashita is the Weed Head TM, a global cannabis advocate, an award-winning strategist, and best-selling author of How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. Currently, Dashita is the Portland Cannabis Manager overseeing all regulatory, licensing, compliance, and equity initiatives for the city's legal industry. With an MBA from Rutgers and an undergrad degree from Princeton, she is also co-founder of the Cannabis Health Equity Movement, also known as CHEM, and is chair of the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition. Above all, Dashita is a mom and a conscious cannabis consumer. Hey, Dashita, come on up. Hey, thanks so much for being here. And next, I'd like to bring up Simone Papone. She is a leader and an advocate for diversity and inclusion in the cannabis industry. She is the CEO and founder of the AAPI-inspired CBD nano-emulsion brand called Kunpu. Simone also provides growth strategy and consultancy for the cannabis industry through a digital marketing agency called AVO. Simone was previously the head of growth for cannabis manufacturer Vertosa, where she managed PR, marketing, and brand partnerships. Come on up, Simone. Hi. Welcome, welcome. I'm beyond thrilled that you're here with me, and let's dive in. Let's get to our questions. So I'm going to direct this first question to Bianca, and then the others, actually. So everyone is going to weigh in on this first question, but Bianca first. So as we know, cannabis is medically legal in 37 states. It's legal for adult use in 18 states plus DC. The industry is really moving along at a fast clip. And even this Mother's Day, we saw, mainstream publications like the LA Times talking about Cannamoms, and Shanitria, who was going to be here today, was featured in that article. And there were other mainstream articles about Cannamoms. So I think that this movement is obviously gaining more visibility. But of course, as we know, prohibitionist attitudes are alive and well, despite all that progress. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, like, where are we? Just broad strokes. What's the general pulse of the Cannamom movement right now? And are we able to speak freely? Are more mothers coming in? And next part of that question, do skin color, sexuality, and other factors play a role in how Cannamoms can be out? Go ahead, Bianca.
Yeah. So I would say the current state of the Cannamom movement is rapidly expanding. As more states come online, more people, more moms especially, feel a sense of freedom to finally be able to come out. And for a lot of people that I've spoke to through the years, that legality factor is the number one contender for them to feel comfortable with their cannabis use. And then secondarily, it's how much they've been exposed to other people to know how confident they feel talking publicly about it. And so I think as more and more moms start coming online, online in terms of comes on to the cannabis movement, whether online or in person, just taking on consuming cannabis, we're starting to see the views shift. Although I will say that I definitely think that the views are shifting much slower for moms than for the rest of the industry. So I think that that's really the underlying factor that we have to bring in to the conversations, is that mothers have a different set of challenges. And that's why the movement is so important, is to help more of those moms overcome the challenges of being open about their cannabis use and not feeling guilty about it. And that's what the movement that I see is really about. And that's where we really start to grow and build that confidence as a community. And so I will just start outright and say that once we reach the point of normalization for mothers, that's when we know that cannabis has been normalized for all of society. So we are leading the charge in terms of, we are going to be the last people that really feel comfortable using cannabis. And that's why it's important to have community and events like this.
Absolutely. And if anyone knows about building community, it's you. Thanks so much. Dashita, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think Bianca hit on a lot of great points. The movement is slow. It's definitely slow compared to what's happening with other demographics. It's definitely slow when you talk about Black and Brown moms. I was sharing with you all before the panel that I have been the weed head for the last 6 years, now going into my 7th year. But in truth, I still really didn't talk about being a mom until the last 2 or 3 years. However, I've always seen it as an important segment. I think as what I'm seeing now is, as more areas of cannabis, as we understand the science, as we understand it as medicine, and recognizing that moms, women in most households are the people who are the deciders on what we use to heal ourselves, it will be really important that moms start to really adopt their usage or their understanding of cannabis based on it being inherently medicinal first. When we look at all of the adult use markets that have shifted, we're still not necessarily seeing moms, because I would say most of them have not taken the health professionals, they have not taken the wellness aspects of it and really re-educated folks. And I think it's going to be moms that do that. I've found the most conviction comes from not, personal use for moms, but trying to solve an issue for their own children that they can't do without cannabis. And so I think when you have to be a caregiver for your family, and you're seeing either your parents dealing with all sorts of autoimmune and late stage in life issues around inflammation, and you want to provide that, or your children dealing with ADHD or even autism, and recognize that you can provide that, it's the mom that is the hub, right, of that wheel. And so I think the movement is just on that precipice, but I don't want to lose, and that's why I love Bianca, I love High Society Mom, I don't want to lose the fact that we're allowed to have fun too. We're allowed to consume for fun and also for wellness, which I think fun is wellness, but it is still broadening the fact that the whole family needs the medicine, and it's usually the mom that does provide that.
Absolutely. Great points there. Moms control 70 to 80% of household spending, I think, are the stats. And absolutely, when it comes to how we care for our families, moms are really central. Great points. See, Simone, would you like to weigh in? How do you see sort of the state of the Cannamom movement right now?
I definitely can agree that it's a slow movement for us. It's so fun being in this industry, and I love the panel collective that you procured here, because as you can see, we come from so many different backgrounds, right? And I would say it's slow in the fact that skin color does play a part in this. Deshita already mentioned, but prior to this, she didn't want to come out as a Cannamom right away. And part of that hesitation, I'm going to assume, Deshita, is because you're a woman of color. And women of color are perceived differently when we're cannabis consumers, right? There's still a lot of women of color who are being attacked by child welfare, for cannabis consumption, even if they're not putting their children at risk, right? When we look at the movement for Cannamoms and how it's shifted, there's definitely high acceptance in terms of social. And this is probably a little bit controversial, but there's more of a high acceptance for Cannamoms who look like Danielle and Bianca, right? Versus moms that look like Deshita or myself. I probably do a little bit better than Deshita, but moms who are brown and black colored, they get a little more of the negative perception when they are a Cannamom and are out there. I'm excited because it's shifting, right? There's a lot of shift towards acceptance for Cannamoms, but there's still a lot of work to be done in acceptance of Cannamoms that are of color as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for talking about that, because, that's something that, as white women in the industry, we absolutely need to acknowledge, be aware of, and, when it's appropriate, use that privilege that we have to help push that envelope and, change conversations. But, listening is a big part of that. And so thank you for speaking on it. So next up, I want to talk about social media, because it's an obvious place where we look for community, obviously, right? Outside of our our living situation, our town, our city, there are lots of Cannamoms living in places where they don't have that in-person community. So, and social media by and for Cannamoms really seems to be booming right now. That's my sense, at least, being part of that as well. So I'm wondering, what do you think the social media landscape looks like for moms, for Cannamoms today? Is the online Cannamom community growing from your perspective? And how does social media really impact the Cannamom movement? And Simone, if you don't mind, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Bianca.
Yeah, my perspective is we're killing it, right, in this game. Yesterday I watched Bianca and her TikTok video and like cannabis and stuff, and I'm just like so amazed and so excited about how unapologetic moms are being on social media, how we're taking up space, how we're owning it, right? That we are cannabis moms, that it's used really to help manage our lives, have a little bit fun, and we could still be great freaking moms here. We still can run the ship and not put our children at risk for all of these, negative things that are put out there, especially psychologically. The impact that's happening with like moms like ourselves being out on social media all the time. I feel like we're birthing a whole new generation of women being unapologetic, especially moms being unapologetic about how they parent, right? Because we get that so much criticism, so much judgment, no matter what we do, whether we're pouring a glass of wine in front of our kids or we're lighting up a joint on the balcony. We get so much judgment for anything. And I really think we're killing it. We're out there, we're owning it, we're unapologetic about it, and we're taking up space that we deserve. And so I love it. Keep it going.
I love to hear that. Yeah. Oh, I love that perspective. Bianca.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up the legality thing one more time, because I've especially noticed that in the like East Coast, how many more Cannamoms are coming online. And as the community is growing, we're just getting stronger and fiercer, and we're learning more about how to support each other and what the challenges are, because we're all there's so many people creating the social media to talk about it, that now we have opened this space where we can commune in all these different ways. We have our Cannamom Clubhouse, High Society Clubhouse on Sundays, where we all meet and we cover all sorts of different subjects, and we get to talk and use our voices to communicate, which we don't get on that same interaction on social media. But there's these different ways that connect us. And the more that we lean into those, and the more that we leverage our community for strength and confidence and more ways to say things. I mean, when I said that, moms can change the future of cannabis on a Clubhouse last spring, and Leah heard it and she came on here and she made that, and now it just keeps getting repeated because it means something. We're creating a movement, and we need those like sound bites of like, we hear over and over again that mommy needs a joint should be just as common as mommy needs a glass of wine. But we come up with new catchphrases and new reasons by talking together, and we can amplify those. And so it's so exciting to be part of this ground floor of this community because we're evolving. The industry is evolving. Our cannabis use is evolving. People are becoming more accepting of using, like I have a hemp brand and smokable hemp, and it's opening the doors to these other cannabinoids with these conversations. So we're learning from each other, and that's how we grow, is by learning, experiencing, talking about it. And that's what these platforms bring.
You're right. You're right. And that's something that I have sort of new appreciation for, to be honest. I wasn't on Instagram for a long time, and I was on Facebook, but it's a really different feeling on Facebook. And the Cannamom movement is actually moving forward. You can see that like week by week over week on Instagram. I think that that's super interesting. And there are other platforms too. And I know we could talk about this for a whole hour as we go to all these questions, but I'd like to keep moving and moving to Dashita now. I'm interested in what you're seeing in sort of broad terms about access right now. As we know, cannabis is in cannabis, access is a perpetual issue because, long-term prohibition still remains in a bunch of states. But, obviously we've had big gains in recent years, and Bianca just mentioned some East Coast states coming online, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, obviously not, legal markets yet open in all those places, but just this movement is gathering momentum. But I'm wondering, what does access look like right now, and have any new barriers to access cropped up recently?
Now, Danielle, when you talk about access, are you talking specifically about access in terms of the plant as a consumer or as an entrepreneur? Because I do think that has been interesting pathway for both, accessing the industry in general as a mom.
You're right about that. I'm going to get to the industry part in a little bit. So right now I'm just speaking about consumers.
Well, I'm always excited, like Bianca, when there are new states that come on, especially when they do provide more opportunity just for the discussion, right? To your point earlier, a lot of us are closeted and we're not interested in sharing our secret. I know certainly as a woman of color, for a long time, I was using cannabis in a closet and shopping from the legacy unregulated market. That's still always available. So I kind of, when I talk about access, I don't know if it's access specifically to cannabis because moms are able to find that trust. But I think more so access to conversations about cannabis, maybe with their health professional, maybe talking about it with your gynecologist, right? Being able to talk specifically to certain products. I actually was really shocked. There's a brand, Foria, that came up in conversation in a doctor's office in the waiting room area. So maybe my bag, of course, it said "Free my weed man," and that might have set it off. But ultimately, the fact that people even had a clue what I was talking about mainly is because that brand was now in a market that didn't exist a year prior. So I do see that there is growth. We are seeing more access to conversations, and I think they're critical because that's what ultimately is going to change it. Yes, a TikTok can also, because it can be a conversation starter, but ultimately being in these places that we have unexpected conversations, certainly more access there. I'm still though alarmed because I'll be honest, I talk about this every week on Sirius, but more than half of the Black population actually live in states that you cannot access cannabis for medicinal purposes. You're still getting arrested for a joint. MPP released a recent report that highlighted the 19 states. And when you look at their percentage of Black people that live there, which essentially I'm also I'm looking at Black moms that live there, it's very concerning. And then it doesn't surprise me that then these populations are the sickest and the poorest. So we're still seeing an access issue primarily through the South, but because of the way our demographics of our states are, that is actually making it meaning less access for Black and brown folks. And I'll say I'm starting to have survivor's remorse, right? I'm able to travel. I have that privilege. I can certainly go any market I want, and I usually can find out, if not the legal, I'm certainly, able to find who the plug is. And there are many people that I've met as I traveled through Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee. They will never leave that state in their lifetime, Black and Indigenous. And I do worry that we're, telling a story, a dominant story in places like New York, and the media is starting to make it like it's accessible, but there are still so many of us that don't have access. And so I feel like a little bit of a mixed bag, because it is very concerning when I travel, just to, testify. I also am always worried about being targeted even there. But thankfully my son is 18. So even though I may go to Mississippi to help moms who are being targeted, and I've definitely been questioned in a way that they would like to rope me in, I feel safer because they can't take him away from me. So the access issue, it's like, it's a catch-22, celebrating in New York, but I do have a little bit of survivor's remorse because I know there's so many people who are suffering.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And that's why I wanted to talk about this question, because as the legal marketplace opens up, we just assume that means more access, and it does not. It's not across the board at all. Simone, do you want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that is like yes and no. And I feel like Dashida has already really put it all out there on the table. I mean, the one great thing for recreational states like California that I'm in, right? Access for moms for sure has improved. I love the delivery service drivers. I don't have to leave my home to go to a dispensary with, my kids going crazy in the other room or anything like that. I could literally order online and have them delivered right to my door safely. And I feel like that's one of the best things for a mom that has been developed in this industry. And there's also a lot of door-to-door education groups popping up, programs, kind of like the Tupperware, scenario that we are used to, and our moms are actually used to. I'm seeing a lot of that happen as well for recreational states that are legal, where a lot of programs are being set up by moms in their home for Tupperware parties, but it's really cannabis education and cannabis sharing of products and whatnot. But to this answer, it's not black or white. I mean, because we have states that are still only medicinally legal and not recreationally legal. Improvement for sure, access has happened in recreational states, but not the other states. And there's still a big fear, just like Dashida mentioned, when you're traveling across state lines into these states that aren't recognizing it recreationally.
Absolutely. And actually on that topic, I didn't plan to ask you this, but Simone, do you want to, on the topic of access, do you want to talk really briefly about your project on translating a guide, a cannabis guide?
Yeah, I mean, myself and Eunice Kim, who is the founder and CEO of Hi-Buy, which also is a community-based cannabis platform, a Cannabis Concierge, we actually just released a book translated in 11 Asian languages and has the English language included. It's a simple educational guide that really spawned off of our own personal challenges in the industry of trying to share the knowledge and plant medicine benefits to our Asian community, to the API community, speaking to my mom, speaking to my aunts and things like that about the difference between hemp and marijuana and the benefits that come from all these cannabinoids, the majors, the minors. We just launched it this month. Digitally, it's already available online. People can go and take a look, and it's in a lot of great languages that will allow more access and inclusivity in the industry. One of the big projects that I'm working on is really internationally, and speaking to countries that are coming online for legalization, especially countries like Thailand. And so it's important for us we have so much education here in the States, right? So much research, But in some of these countries, they don't even have the word for CBD or THC or cannabis, cannabinoids. And so how do you educate them if they don't even have the material and the research? And so we've taken very basic knowledge, like Cannabis 101, translated into multiple languages, and is sharing it amongst the community. It's being shared by so many different AAPI brands. There's over 45 different women also highlighted as part of the campaign who are in the industry. Also, some are even moms as well, doing their own thing, leading the way. And this is all part of like everyone's part to do their advocacy work, providing better access, inclusivity, and that recently just launched.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Simone. That was really cool that we got to hear about that project. Okay, we have a few more minutes and I have 3 more questions. So we'll try to bump through this really quickly. So I mean, not quickly, but we'll cover as much as we can. So Dashida, I wanted to get to the industry side of things. As you mentioned just a little bit earlier, do we know anything? I actually Googled like something like mothers working in the cannabis industry, and I came up with 3 results. Not like as a full phrase. So obviously there might be other articles that, allude to it, but there's not a lot of information yet out there. Do we have any sense? I mean, obviously women have dropped out of the cannabis industry in some numbers in recent years, and part of that is very much due to the pandemic. Part of that is due to just the volatility of the cannabis industry. But do you know anything about mothers' participation in the industry specifically? Are there statistics out there? And is it hard for moms to participate in this industry?
I don't have any statistics, and I love data, so trust me, I have certainly been looking. What I will say is, anecdotally, I find that mothers have a much better path in the industry through entrepreneurship and working on their own. I have definitely chatted with enough people who have gone inside corporate cannabis, if you will. Even they in legal markets struggle with proper benefits. There are things that as a mom that in a family you kind of worry about that maybe someone who is single, and yes, single people need health insurance too, by the way, I should say. But I think it's just a little bit easier for you to say, I'll go without before you put that risk on your family, especially if you're a single mom. So I personally have, mostly been an entrepreneur until I started working for the government. And that probably is the safest place for a mom to make that transition. The right government, of course. I'm in progressive Portland, but I found that the pathway in has been entrepreneurship. Now, whether you can stay is about funding, and ultimately women in general, and even I still think there's a stigma against moms and people who want to take care of family and business are not getting funded. I've actually been in the room with private equity guys, literal, that's what I call them guys. They didn't know much about cannabis, but they were moving money. And the commentary after seeing some of the brands that I actually respect that still exists today, compared to the way that they had commentary against some of the other brands, some of which do not exist today, was quite funny. And a lot of what she was doing and how many kids does she have, it's still a challenge. So I think we have to make those spaces for each other. I was just saying earlier that I almost rarely will turn down an opportunity to do a one-on-one with a woman, especially a woman of color, and then especially a mom, to be honest. I feel like we have to push our hand out to say, hey, this is the way I did it. These are the connections I have. You still got to forge your way. But the industry right now is still pretty challenging if you have a family.
Absolutely. And I know that we could keep talking about this so much longer, but I do want to get to the other questions. But, we do talk in Clubhouse pretty frequently about the challenges that Cannamom entrepreneurs face. And, there are a lot of them, but it's also a pretty exciting area for so many of us. So it's a mixed bag, I think. All right. Let's talk a little bit about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and cannabis. And I'll go to you first, Bianca. The conversation, it gets hot sometimes. We have a lot to say about it. In my DMs on Instagram, that's probably one of my most frequently asked questions, and I'm pretty sure that's true for you too. So, what's the recent conversation like around cannabis, pregnancy, and breastfeeding?
Was that going to me? Okay, sorry, you froze for a second there. Okay, so the recent research, and I would say the recent sentiment, is that we are getting stronger in our confidence as mothers to empower others to be confident in making smart choices for themselves. And that's what I think this movement is really doing, because we do not have the solid research yet. It's like we'll get one research study going one direction saying it's safe, and then we'll have another one saying it's not safe. But I just saw a Tylenol lawsuit that if you took Tylenol while you were pregnant, that you can, you know, be part of this class action suit to get money from Tylenol for your kid getting ADHD. So there are risks with everything, and we have to make smart choices for our bodies. And we have to take all the information we can possibly know, and then we have to make the smart choice for ourselves. And a lot more moms are getting more comfortable doing something that is natural as an alternative to taking pharmaceuticals. And that boost in confidence is a general sentiment that's happening because we are voicing what we know to like be the opposite opposing sector against the mainstream media that's trying to create this fear. Because there hasn't been any data that is a solid, oh my gosh, we should be scared. It's not there. We are being cautious, and this cautiousness is not serving anyone well. We have a plant, it can do amazing things, it can be abused just like anything else. There is a extent of maybe too much, but we're trying to advocate for intentional use, and we do that by amplifying our voices and all like helping to create a space where moms feel safe consuming. And I say this with so much caution because everyone needs to do their own research, and especially mothers of color need to use caution because they are being targeted. I know for a fact. I've heard it too many times. We're not denying that. If you are a mother of color, use caution. We are not there as a society yet, unfortunately. And that's what some of us that have the privilege and have a voice and have a platform are advocating, to raise awareness of this discrimination that's happening in the hospital while you're giving birth at the most critical time where you are at your most vulnerable. And there's the best quote ever that I cannot remember where I heard it. Maybe it's from Danielle interviewing a bunch of people, but that the most damaging part of CPS intervention is on the mother's mental state. Like, that's what the harm that they're doing. That's the biggest harm that cannabis is causing, is to the mother's mental stability. I will mute.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, and I hear your passion behind this, because this is something that we talk about with women all the time, pretty much every day. And there are so many possible ways I think that women and moms could turn to cannabis for natural solutions in these really challenging moments, but there's still so much we don't know, as we've said. And, you know, doctors and midwives are not on board yet for the most part. So, you know, but this conversation is moving forward and we're having it. And there's a lot of anecdotal stuff going on around this subject. So I think it's a really fascinating area that we're going to keep our eyes on. All right, we got to wrap up really, really soon, but I wanted to get in a last little something about, you know, how do we move this forward? So if all of you, if each of you wouldn't mind just maybe 30 seconds, like, how do we move forward as a movement? Where do we go from here? You know, next steps, big vision. Would you like to go first, Tashita?
Sure. I'm actually working on an op-ed that I've been working on forever, it feels like now, but I just really think we have to tell the truth about cannabis to our kids. Let's start, you know, with undoing some of this damage by ensuring that our kids, I don't think it's my 18-year-old kid, by the way, I think it's the 10 and under, have a different relationship with the plant. Let our generation, and maybe Generation Z, like my son, 18 to 25, let that be the last generation that is still very ignorant about the plant and subjected to the stereotypes as their first experience. And if you have a kid that's 12 and older, sorry to tell you, but that is already happening. And so just tell the truth about the plant to your children, teach them, and don't be afraid for them to teach their friends. It's not like telling them Santa's not real. I actually think that's more of an infraction than telling them that cannabis is medicine.
Hear, hear. Thank you. See, Simone.
I couldn't agree more with Dashita. Just be open and transparent about it. I think as moms who consume, let's lead by example too, right? How do we teach others to have a healthy relationship with the plant like we do? And that's like leading by example. That's educating. That's doing our part in the community and whatnot. I mean, let's make it wine. Let's make weed mom. Somebody even already said that in the comments. Let's make weed mom as normal as wine mom, right?
That's right. Bianca, last word to you.
Yes. Yes. So I want to reiterate the importance of the community and how, as we grow more confident as individuals, our voices spread, and every single person out there, whether you have a social media platform that you're openly sharing, or whether you're sharing it with your mother-in-law or your person you bumped in from at the soccer practice, whoever you're sharing with, you can make a difference, and you can be that special person that they feel comfortable and confident confiding in their use, and you can give them confidence. So you have the power to make a difference. Every single one of you can make a difference, and then they can make a difference, and then they can make a difference. So as this community grows, our voices just get stronger. So please don't doubt yourself and don't second guess yourself. If you feel like you want to share cannabis and your experience with someone, do it, because it can make a difference for them.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great way to end. And I want to just extend my sincere, heartfelt thanks to the three of you for being here and for sharing your really interesting perspectives with us and with the community. Yay, Cannamoms. All right. See everybody in the next sessions. Bye.
Pick up your Weed Mom book. It has all the info in it.
Thank
you, Danielle.
Thank you so much.